This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Home at last. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast.
And splashdown. Crew 9 back on Earth.
The stranded astronauts are back.
Splashdown. We see main chutes cut. Butch, Sunny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
Welcome home indeed. Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams splashing down off the coast of Florida just before 6 o'clock last night after a 9-month odyssey aboard the International Space Station. Jonathan Surrey with Fox News.
It was absolutely amazing. The splashdown went down flawlessly, and amazingly, there was a pod of dolphins to greet them. Who needs rainbows and unicorns?
How about that? NBC's Tom Costello continues our coverage.
Off the coast of Tallahassee, they made it look easy. A spectacular splashdown, marking the end of an unexpectedly long journey for astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams.
The stranded astronauts hitched a ride home aboard an Elon Musk-built rocket. They'd been stuck on that orbiting laboratory since last June. A federal judge is blocking an executive order from President Trump that bans transgender people from military service. It is the latest in a string of legal setbacks of late for the president. Transgender people represent less than 1% of the total number of active duty service members. President Trump calling for the impeachment of a federal judge who challenged his immigration policy. That judge declared illegal the president's migrant flights to El Salvador. On board those flights were hundreds of suspected gang members from Venezuela.
Chief Justice John Roberts disagrees with impeachment, writing for more than 2 centuries it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision.
Lucas Tomlinson at Fox News. A federal judge has found DOJ's shutdown of USAID was likely unconstitutional. Here's legal analyst Thane Rosenbaum.
This is the first case where a federal judge ruled that Elon Musk did not have the constitutional authority to use DOJ as a personal scalpel to dismantle U.S. aid and other federal agencies.
The judge says Musk can no longer place USAID employees on leave, close its buildings, or shut down its website. Russian ruler Vladimir Putin's agreed to stop targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure. He made that promise following a lengthy phone call yesterday with President Trump. Trump admits getting Russia and Ukraine to lay down their arms for a month will not be easy.
Right now, you have a lot of guns pointing at each other, and a ceasefire without going a little bit further would have been tough. I think we had a great call. It lasted almost 2 hours. Talked about a lot of things.
While the talks continue, so does the war. Overnight, Russia launched more missiles and drones at Ukraine. The BBC's James Landau gets reaction from Kyiv.
President Zelensky said there were multiple drone attacks on civilian targets, including a hospital in the town of Sumy.
President Trump will talk peace today with Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky. It's their first conversation since that dust-up at the White House a couple of weeks ago. The war is back on between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Israeli Defense Forces concentrating their assault on terror targets in the Hamas strongholds of Khan Yunis and Rafah. That's in southern Gaza. CBS's Rami Inocencio.
Many say that Netanyahu is actually keeping the war going to save his own political skin. This is my 7th rotation here, and that cynicism has been very much constant.
The Israeli head of state says politics has nothing to do with it.
In the past 2 weeks, Israel did not initiate any military action in the hope that Hamas would change course. Well, that didn't happen. Israel does not target Palestinian civilians. We target Hamas terrorists. We will bring our people home, and we will destroy Hamas.
Netanyahu blames these renewed hostilities on Hamas's refusal to release any more hostages. There's been a major release of files pertaining to the JFK assassination. These new documents do not reveal much, however, in the way of new information, but a lot of it is interesting. CBS's Arden Fari has more.
For those hoping for a bombshell revelation about the 1963 Kennedy assassination, This latest trove of documents appears to disappoint. Most, if not all, of the 80,000 pages released by the National Archives are not new. What is new? Some of the documents that were previously redacted to protect intelligence sources and collection methods can now be seen in full.
That's Arden Fari at CBS News. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, says the average age of a first-time mom in this country is now at a new all-time high. That age at which women become mothers for the first time is 27 and a half years. Back in the 1970s, it was 21 years. The defending World Series champion LA Dodgers got the 2025 season off to a good start today. They swept the Chicago Cubs in a pair of games in Tokyo, Japan. Shohei Ohtani hit his first home run of the season over there. LA manager Dave Roberts.
I know Shohei puts his pants on just like we all do, one leg at a time. But if there's ever a superhero, I think Shohei just seems like a superhero.
Japanese pitcher Roki Sasaki making his MLB debut for the Dodgers today in Tokyo. The Cubs and Dodgers now return to the States, with the rest of the league starting the regular season. Next Thursday is opening day in Big League Baseball. Opening day for the States, I should say. Still to come on the Noon Report, Hochul's housing initiative. Is paying prisoners a good idea? And the Bonnies get blown out.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. A fine, warm day underway, but changes are on the way. Forecast details are coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. Let's check the stories making news where you live. The New York State budget is due in less than 2 weeks, and lawmakers are still at odds with Governor Hochul when it comes to a proposed cell phone ban at school. Melinda Person with the state's largest teachers union says there should be a ban.
Given the youth mental health crisis that we are experiencing right now in this country, we really need to take this very seriously and provide our students with, 7 hours a day free from these distractions to learning.
David Albert with the New York State School Boards Association says students should be allowed access to their phones during non-instruction times.
There are certainly homeroom periods, there are lunches, there are breaks, there are other opportunities where students can use a cell phone, especially if they're in communication with a parent, or they have to arrange for maybe change in schedule for transportation. So we think a bell-to-bell ban is somewhat draconian.
The governor does want a bell-to-bell ban on digital devices at all 700 public school districts statewide. Governor Hochul has also announced a major new housing initiative for New York.
You think about affordability. The number one expense for a family is always their housing.
The governor wants to spend $270 million to repurpose existing structures and turn them into homes for nearly 2,000 low-income families.
This is a fire station. Rundown buildings that can be brought back to life if we put the resources in and have the vision.
Hochul says the solution to New York's housing crisis is to build more homes.
Thousands will have the joy of having their own place, that magical move-in day when everything seems possible. A future where your life isn't so dependent on a landlord who could toss you out. Your own home means everything.
This low-income housing project is part of the governor's $25 billion 5-year housing plan. Her goal is to create or preserve 100,000 affordable homes across the Empire State. New York Democrats want to pay prisoners once their sentence is up. New legislation pending in Albany would give ex-cons $2,500 to rebuild their lives on the outside of prison. Chris Wallace spent 15 years behind bars and thinks the handout is a hand up for ex-cons like him.
I had to acquire an entire wardrobe. I had to acquire basic hygienes. I had to provide for my basic necessities, and I only had $40. We're just asking for a second chance, a fair shot at a second chance.
But critics say the money could be better spent on law-abiding citizens. Western New York State Senator George Borrello.
If you're concerned about how much money you're going to have when you get out of prison, there's a simple solution. Don't end up in prison to begin with. $425 a month for 6 months And this money, there's no accountability for that. This is basically just walking around money for these folks, and it encourages dependency.
The legislation sets aside $25 million to pay ex-cons upon their release. On average, New York will spend about $116,000 a year on every inmate in New York. Officials in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, investigating the death of a baby boy found buried in a shoebox in the backyard of a home. Experts say his mom may have aborted him, but that's not what the county coroner is saying just yet. He tells ABC 27.
We didn't make any determination of whether the baby was aborted. That investigation is up to law enforcement. We just looked at the fetus itself and made a determination that the fetus was too young to survive outside the womb.
A search warrant shows medication to cause an abortion was purchased online by the mother. Now, documents show she went to an abortion clinic, but was turned away because she was told she was too far along in her pregnancy. Abortions are illegal in Pennsylvania after 24 weeks. This baby boy was about 20 weeks old. Home healthcare aides in Pennsylvania are worried about the future of their industry due to low wages. Their numbers are dwindling in a state that's becoming increasingly dependent on home healthcare workers.
And so we really need to address the crisis now. Because it is literally getting worse by the day.
Mia Haney runs the Pennsylvania Home Care Association. She says for every 10 home care workers hired, 8 will leave the industry within a year.
Patients who need access to the service are sitting at home waiting for someone to show up, and no one's coming.
Thepennsylvania ranks in the top 5 nationwide when it comes to states with the highest percentage of senior citizens. New York State is taking action against robocalls.
State Attorney General Tish James and 27 other attorneys general are pushing to protect residents against robo and scam calls. It's a big problem in the Empire State. Rose Say is among those getting called all day long.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
James has filed an amicus brief in court that would defend a rule by the FCC that stops telemarketers from obtaining and selling consumers' phone numbers to robocallers without their consent. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
Thank you, Sarah. The Madison County, New York Sheriff's warning residents about an ongoing phone scam there. People have been getting calls from scammers that claim a warrant's been issued for their arrest for missing jury duty. It's a scam. Anyone who gets a call like this should hang up immediately and alert the Madison County Sheriff. Medical marijuana companies may soon be required to clean up their act in Pennsylvania. Many are turning a blind eye to mold and pesticide contamination at their labs or are incorrectly reporting levels of THC.
The medical marijuana business is basically finding a compliant testing laboratory that's going to give them a clean bill of health.
State Representative Dan Frankel sponsoring a bill that would force greater transparency on the medical marijuana industry in Pennsylvania. It's almost the end of the road. Family Life's Mark Webster updates us on a lengthy effort to revamp New York Thruway service areas.
Yeah, this week the Angola service area officially reopened. It's between the Angola and Silver Creek exits on the westernmost portion of I-90. That marks the next to last Thruway service plaza to do so. The only one remaining closed now is the Modena service area. That's on southbound I-87 between New Paltz and Newburgh. The first revamp in the $450 million overhaul of the system was completed in the summer of 2022. This last one should wrap up late this year. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you kindly, Mark. The St. Bonaventure men's basketball season came to a disappointing end last night at the Riley Center in Olean, New York. The Bonnies got blown out on their home court by Kent State in opening round action of the NIT. The Bonnies finished the season with a record of 22-12. We've got more sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the Boston Celtics hung on to beat the Nets in Boston 104-96. Kristaps Porzingis led the C's. He had 25 points and 13 rebounds. Atlanta blew out Charlotte 134-102. The Warriors took down the Bucks 104-93, and the Clippers won a 132-119 decision over the Cavs. On the ice at Madison Square Garden, Calgary snapped a 3-game losing streak by edging the Rangers 2-1. Artemi Panarin had the lone goal for the Blue Shirts. The Islanders did it again. This time it was against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Trailing 2-0 going into the third period, the Isles scored 4 goals. And they came back to win it 4-2. Pierre Engvall netted the game winner for New York. The loss by Pittsburgh ends their 4-game winning streak. Elsewhere, the Oilers, Canadiens, Kraken, Caps, Blues, Stars, and Canucks were victorious. The men's NCAA tournament got underway with the 2 play-in games last night, and Bob, the madness has already begun. Alabama State pulled off an incredible last-second score off of a full-court inbounds pass, and they eliminated St. Francis by 2 points. If ever there was a Hail Mary pass in basketball, this was it. The ball got batted around and landed in an Alabama State player's hands, and he laid it in. Kind of figures that the guy who threw the full court pass, Micah Simpson, was a quarterback in middle school. And in baseball, the Dodgers swept the 2 games in Japan against the Cubs 4-1 and 6-3. And yes, Shohei Ohtani went deep. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, Major League Baseball underway. Hard to believe it's here already. Still to come on the Noon Report, Butch and Sonny, welcome home. Real Answers with Chris Anderson and Brian Query will tickle our funny bone after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stone Street. At the recent ARC conference in London, many refer to the past year or so of conservative wins, both in the U.S. and in other Western nations, as a kind of vibe shift. Perhaps, but it's also just as clear that not everyone has gotten that memo. There are many legislative bodies around the world that have doubled down on far progressive ideology, showing how different laws actually reflect wildly different understandings of reality in the human person. For example, a Colorado bill just passed through the House that would make misgendering the dead a Class 2 misdemeanor, punishable with up to 120 days in jail and $750 in fines. Quote, if they happen to die of prostate cancer and their gender identity is female, that's important information for us to have, said a Democratic Representative Karen McCormick of Longmont. And so, coroners and other officials who sign a death certificate that does not align with the deceased's gender identity could face punishment similar to someone who runs a brothel. Biologist and atheist Colin Wright had a whole different take on the bill, and I quote, if a female who identifies as a male dies of ovarian cancer, recording her as male would skew medical stats and obscure real biological trends with fraudulent sex data. Over time, and across medical context, this will mess with how we understand and tackle health issues, end quote. Meanwhile, in Maine, the House Speaker repeatedly silenced and then House Democrats officially censured State Representative Laurel Libby for arguing in session that men should not compete against women in sports. Pretending instead that the matter was settled and that any opposition was discrimination, that state's legislative body is defying President Trump's recent executive order on the matter. ADF General Counsel Kristen Wagner described that situation in Maine as, and I quote, the same old leftist playbook we've seen for years, shaming and silencing women who dare to point out the reality of what's happening in their sports, end quote. And outside of the U.S., lawmakers in Scotland are working to ensure that no challenges to abortion are allowed from anywhere. According to a report from ADF International, a young American mother named Sarah Spencer was suspended from her midwifery studies in Dundee, Scotland, for posting to social media her belief that unborn children deserve protection. And it also remains unclear whether someone in Scotland could be arrested for a silent prayer against abortion in their own homes, as Vice President J.D. Vance recently claimed. And in England, Kevin Lister's years-long legal battle against progressive speech codes continues. A teacher, Lister refused to use a student's preferred pronouns and was eventually fired, even though he was willing to accommodate by using gender-neutral communication. His case is ongoing. All of these episodes reveal that despite the recent dramatic change in the White House, nations do not live by executive orders alone. Culture matters, and cultures both reflected in and reinforced by political realities. That's especially true at the local level. Look, it's far easier when our political conflicts are merely about different policies that aim to accomplish the same basic goal. But it's far more difficult when the political landscape is about achieving different ends altogether. And because these stakes are so high, politics matters, and it will continue to matter for the foreseeable future. However, behind the questions of elections and candidates and policies are deeper questions, worldview questions. These matter even more and are reflected in more than just the political realm. To fight in politics without addressing the worldview conflict that's upstream from politics will be, in the end, an exercise in futility. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Outside we go. Weatherman Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast through the afternoon. Fair amount of sunshine through wispy clouds and warm. High temperatures mid-60s to mid-70s. Much cooler near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Partly cloudy, mild tonight. The low in the 40s to near 50. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, breezy. Showers arriving. Highs in the 50s and 60s with falling temperatures in the afternoon in parts of the area. And the showers will end as a bit of snow in some areas later tomorrow night. Friday, a few morning flakes. Then some sunny breaks. Much chillier with high temperatures in the 40s.
All right, that's a long way from where we are today, Kevin. Thank you anyway. This is the Noon Report. I'm Bob Price, and here's what's going on Wednesday, the 19th of March. Welcome home. Stranded astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams are stranded no more. They splashed down late yesterday aboard a Freedom capsule in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Florida. NBC's Tom Costello.
Butch and Sonny are probably really feeling the effects of gravity. Everything feels heavier. Their legs, their arms, their coffee cups. They may be a bit wobbly on their feet, lightheaded, but they're now with their families. Hopefully they got a good night's sleep at their crew quarters in Houston.
After almost 10 months in space, the astronauts hitched a ride home aboard an Elon Musk-built rescue rocket. Wilmore and Williams spent 286 days orbiting the Earth aboard the International Space Station.
Astronauts come and go up to the space station and come back, and we cover it and we wish them the best, but this really grabbed a lot of attention. They're kind of famous people right now.
Former astronaut Mike Massimino tells the Today Show that reacclimating to gravity will not be easy for the astronauts.
They got to get used to being on Earth again, so it's going to be a couple weeks of supervised workouts, the rehab period, going to the gym, lifting weights again, moving around, running, doing the things that they enjoy doing and that they need to do.
Butch and Sonny will undergo several days of medical evaluations in Houston before being allowed to go home to their families. What a homecoming that will be. President Trump continues to suffer setbacks from federal judges over his efforts to shrink and reshape the federal government. Several of these judges have declared his actions illegal. Correspondent Peter Alexander.
The president's allies have called for various judges to be removed for blocking administration policies in the first months of his second term. But President Trump himself raised the stakes by arguing a judge who ruled against him should be impeached.
That judge ruled the president's migrant flights to El Salvador were unconstitutional. On board those flights were alleged Venezuelan gang members. The White House claims they had ties to the notorious Tren de Aragua gang. Peace talks continue to try to end the war in Ukraine, but there is fresh fighting to report from the war zone. Russia overnight launching missiles and sent drones into Ukraine. Ukraine responded with military action of its own. NBC's Richard Engel.
Despite President Trump's peace initiative, the ceasefire here in Ukraine never took hold, with both Russia and Ukraine firing at each other, both on the offensive. But the process is not over, with Ukraine's President Zelensky saying he will speak with President Trump later today.
President Trump spoke by phone yesterday for a couple of hours with Russia's Vladimir Putin. Israel launched new airstrikes in southern Gaza overnight after a ceasefire broke down with Hamas. Vicky Barker has the latest from the Middle East.
More than a dozen people were reportedly killed in the latest Israeli airstrikes on Gaza overnight, far fewer than in yesterday's assaults, which reportedly left more than 400 dead. But it shows Israel is doubling down on the resumption of combat operations in the Palestinian Palestinian territory.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says the war won't end until all the hostages are free and Hamas is no more. Last night, the Trump administration released government documents pertaining to the Kennedy assassination, but history buffs awaiting information about a possible conspiracy will no doubt feel a little disappointed.
The new documents have been posted on the website of the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration. More than 1,100 PDFs, some containing dozens of pages and some which are still blacked out. The vast majority of more than 6 million pages of records had already been released, but President Trump ordered all of them to be that way. Many who have studied what's been released so far by the government say the public should not anticipate any earth-shattering revelations.
Matt Piper with CBS News. You're listening to the Noon Report for Wednesday on Family Life.
Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature during the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Chris, welcome back once again.
Good to be here, Mark.
Well, today's topic, work-life balance.
Balance is key. Balance good, everything good.
Yeah, in the traditional 9-to-5 world of the past, maybe it wasn't all that hard to maintain a good ratio between work life and family life, but in our online email, Zoom meeting existence of today, maybe not so much.
And it just gets harder and harder, it seems like, and it's not uncommon to have these types of conversations around the water cooler. I know I find myself having them with folks frequently, not even just my own clients, other folks in casual conversation about how busy we are.
So elusive to try to draw the lines. I know Scripture speaks a lot to the importance of family and about the importance of work, like working as if for the Lord. I'm not sure if there's really a magic bullet verse out there that talks about balancing the two.
Yeah, I think that you have to look at the importance that God places on family and relationships to understand that the enemy is going to try to disrupt that any way he can. And that includes using things, too. I mean, things that, for example, when your children are involved in every sport and every activity possible, and how that itself can take away from that precious time around the dinner table or playing games together, game night as a family or something of that nature. Those are the things, good activities infringe on the best activities.
Yeah, having lived through the minivan years, if you will, I actually grew, my son, for example, played travel hockey, and I treasured those times, not the games, but the travel time where we would drive, it would just be me and him, and so you could kind of turn that into a positive in a way.
I think you have to use those moments wisely nowadays because it's getting harder and harder to have time with the family. For example, back when I was in school, games were not played and practices did not on Sundays, except for in very rare occasions. And by and large, you could kind of depend on Sunday to be the day that you'd be at home with the family, even if the kids were working on homework. Everybody was still kind of home, so it was a little easier. Nowadays, Sundays are treated as just another day of the week by secular society by and large. So it's becoming more of an issue, and it's harder for Christian families that want to go to church and spend that time as a family to actually have that day. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but it needs to be much more intentional, and families need to decide we're going to put our emphasis on what's our priorities. And sometimes that can be worked out with coaches and teams and other activities in schools and say, hey, look, my family will not be available on Sunday. I'm sorry to inconvenience you. However, that's the way it is. But that is something that families need to consider. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to make it a priority at a personal level, even if the rest of society is not following?
Yeah. For further reference, check out Chariots of Fire sometime. It'd be a good thing to try. You're listening to Real Answers. I'm Mark Webster, along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson, talking about work-life balance. And so, like you touched on this, I guess it really comes down to you really got to be purposeful about both.
You do. And it's not something, like I said, it's not something that can just happen very casually. I think conversations need to be had between the parents and then also between the parents and their children, as well as coaches and on teams, and just really understand it is a challenge. It is hard. It's not impossible. It needs to happen. And as well as, as you're a parent, as you're working to keep up with the pace of life, keep up with inflation, the price of eggs, as we all know, is, that type of thing. Sometimes you might have to take a look at where your money's going and where your time's being spent to cut things out so that you can have more time or more resources available for the activities that matter, the time spent with your family. And it's something that, again, needs to happen actively, just take a look at where you're spending your time, where you're spending your money to free up time and money for activities that will help foster a stronger family life, a stronger relationship with your kids, and as married couples with each other. Of course, I don't mean to exclude single parents. Of course, they have an even harder time. So single parents, I just really pray that you can get plugged into a church that can offer support for you as well, because I know that when you're a single parent, boy, that's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
For sure. You see this story circulate around where, that if you're on your deathbed, what do you think you're going to be thinking about? Probably not your job.
Exactly. And you've also heard the quotes where when people say, when they look back on their life, hardly anybody says, boy, I sure wish I'd have spent a lot more time in the office. You hear people say, I sure wish I'd have spent more time with my family.
Amen to that. You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Thanks again, Chris.
My pleasure, Mark.
All right, great conversation. Thank you, guys. Real Answers comes your way Wednesdays during the Noon Report. You can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature, as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. While we savor some balmy mid-spring-like air this day, changes are coming. There's a potent front out in Missouri coming east, going to deliver breezes and showers tomorrow. Much chillier weather in its wake, and that chill will likely linger for a while. So enjoying today through the afternoon. Fair amount of sunshine through wispy clouds and warm. High temperatures mid-60s to mid-70s. Much cooler near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Partly cloudy, mild tonight, the low in the 40s to near 50. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, breezy, showers arriving. Highs in the 50s and 60s with falling temperatures in the afternoon in parts of the area. And the showers will end as a bit of snow in some areas later tomorrow night. Friday, a few morning flakes. Then some sunny breaks, much chillier with high temperatures in the 40s.
All right, for the record, folks, spring officially arrives tomorrow. Hey, we'll get there eventually, won't we? Finally, at noon, we tickle your funny bone by celebrating the gift of humor. Family Life's Brian Query.
Everyone laughs. It's how we make life fun. And today we celebrate this incredible gift of joy as it's Let's Laugh Day. This day is dedicated to encouraging people to find humor in everyday life. Laughter provides many benefits for both physical and mental health by reducing stress, boosting the immune system, and improving our mood. It's a powerful tool that, when used properly, can even help us in difficult situations. Laughter can also help us feel more positive and optimistic and promote social bonding. There are many ways to celebrate laughter, so today, take some time to appreciate it by sharing a joke, watching something funny, reading a humorous book, or just letting loose and having a good laugh. Here's something to get you started. Why did the bicycle fall over? It was too tired. Brian Query, Family Life News.
He's one funny guy, that Brian Query. Thank you, sir. And that's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, March 19th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.